Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 362. Hey, Vic.
Zoom H4n Pro engaged.
Now that we are talking, now that we are recording, Vic was just saying I look like an angel.
I think the word I used was deity.
Oh, Vic.
Yes.
You know what I really want to do? We haven't talked about this. Hang on. We're gonna jump into the question box, which I just got a question.
That would have been perfect for Jeff.
Today at 3:46 a.m. Yeah. So this episode, you talked to the one and only Jeff Miller.
Which was terrifying, by the way. Not that he's like a terrifying human being, but he's
Jeff
probably one of the most prolific writers, woodworkers, period.
So I haven't listened to the episode yet. I'm going to listen to it shortly. Does Jeff? So Jeff has written multiple books. He's done four books.
4 books. Countless articles for Fine Woodworking, Popular Woodworking, Wood Magazine, Furniture and Cabinet Making.
Really?
Yep.
And not only has he done that, but he makes incredible furniture. He's known for making incredible chairs.
His chairs are bananas.
He just had an article in issue 322, Fine Woodworking Magazine, table on this beautiful shaker table. He's constantly coming up with cool jigs. And the joint on that table is crazy. It's pinned, but pinned from the inside of the table, not the outside, so you don't see it. Jeff is... But do you talk about the bowls?
We touched on the bowls.
Okay, good.
We talked about the equipment.
Thank you. That's
because the fact that there's this machine that he has contrived from pictures that he's seen of David Pye's, it's crazy.
Listeners, we will link to it and all of that stuff. But Jeff, in my head, Jeff has a mind that never, ever, ever stops. And he's constantly thinking about processes. And I love that. I love things like that. So,
and you're going to love, because I'm not going to spoil it, but you're going to love what he's currently working on.
I might know. Jeff and I do text.
Okay, that's fine. We'll talk about it offline, but because I don't want people to know what direction he's going in until it's time to talk about it.
All right. This is awesome. Vic, let's answer a quick listener question.
Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Or let's try.
There is only do, there is no try.
Because there's we need to get people sending questions in more, right?
Right.
And there was actually a forum post on Fine Woodworking that I was going to send you, Vic, about people missing the old school question and answer episodes. And my retort to that is send in questions and we'll answer them. So
chicken and egg people.
Yep. Yeah. We're trying to make omelets. We're going to make an omelet, whether you send us eggs or not. That metaphor didn't work. I'm sorry.
I knew where you were going, but I just pictured this omelet without an egg in it, and it's like, is that a hash then?
Is that a point? Chicken omelet? What is?
Anyway,
all right. So
ask the question.
This question is from Darren. He sent this in yesterday at 9 p.m.
Thank you for participating, Darren.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you for being a part of the answer.
Being a Q for the Q&A.
Unfortunately, he sends a picture, and you should have this email in your inbox or in your special email box.
Okay.
I'm looking at a project similar to this Green Rock Ottoman by George Nakashima. And we will post the photo in the show notes, folks. What technique would you use to thin this board out like the picture attached? Other than the obvious hand planing it down, maybe that's the only option. So I'm opening up the picture, and there is a board that is tapered. So it is standing on end. So the long grain is running on the floor, if you will. And it is tapered the width of that board.
Okay.
So let's brainstorm other than hand planing, which is the obvious answer. We know. But Vic and I aren't necessarily the ones to hand plane a big old board to thickness. In my head, Vic, I think a sled or like a little riser on one side of the planer of a benchtop planer would thin the edge of the board appropriately, but you would need two sleds because you're going to flip the board over and do it again.
Right.
So,
but that's not uncommon with a lot of sort of jiggery, whether you're doing like, double tapered this or that, or like a 8-sided tapered something or other. Like the one jig is not going to do it all. So you have to basically, do like a test board out of like some crummy wood like poplar to sort of prove out, okay, this is how I get this taper, and then you have to flip it over, make a new sled to accommodate for the new geometry, and then send it through again. So it's like minimum two jigs.
And it doesn't need to be like this crazy Jeff Miller level jig. It just needs to be a piece
scraps
of
of wood. Yeah.
With a runner under one side to. So like, let's say if you want
hot glued in place.
Hot glued. Thank you. Let's say if you wanted to have like the edge of the board or the board taper 5 degrees or what, it's probably less than 5 degrees, but 5 degrees from edge to edge. One runner's going to give you that 5 degree, and then you're going to double it and flip it over because you need to make up for the 5 degree taper that's on the board now, right?
Right.
And then you're going to do a 10 degree taper on the other side.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just basically have to you have to jig it in space so that you're getting the angle that you want. And then you have to rejig it in space when you flip it over, because now you've changed the dimensions, you've changed the angles.
Okay.
So likely what you'll have to do is like increase by simply adding like another layer, right? And I'm sure mathematically, and smarter people than us could figure out how to do that.
Larissa.
Mathematically.
Yeah. So, and
essentially you're trying to get it tilted up so that it's like the planer is then going to like remove material until it essentially flattens it.
Yes.
But because you've got it jigged up, it's going to be a taper.
One thing that I would add is I think you would need a lip on one side of the plywood that it is running on to keep the board from falling down into the
abyss.
Yes. But, and honestly, Darren, that is the only way I can think of doing it other than with hand tools. I think that's pretty much the answer. I mean, there's probably methods you could do it on the jointer or something like that, but this is...
Well, and I think you could also, that technique will also work if you're like a fan of using those router sleds. That sort of flat, big panels or whatever. You could do it that way too, where the tool is moving instead of the wood.
Gotcha. Good answer.
Sorry, the tool instead of the wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, if you don't have we're assuming he's got a planer. I mean, most people have a planer, but if you don't have a planer, you can totally do that with, you can rig it up onto a bench and then have a couple of rails that everything runs on and
do like the Nick Offerman style slab flattening jig or whatever, which we will do.
Right. Build your own or spend $1,000 on one, whatever you want to do.
There you go, Vic. Great answer. Thank you for coming up with a second option.
There's always more options. It's just a matter of what equipment you have and sort of, you can usually figure something out.
Yeah.
I've even seen people do it with a similar setup with a circular saw, and they just make a bunch of curve cuts and then bang the rest of it out and then just hand plane it to final, or if you prefer a power method, you could use like a portable planer or like a hand planer or a bell sander.
Yeah.
Right. The nice thing about using a machine is that you're gonna get repeatable results.
If you have a planer, I think that's probably the best.
100%.
Quickest too. So awesome. Well, there you go, Darren. Vic, I'm excited to hear you and Jeff.
I'm excited for you to hear it too. It was a great conversation, and a lot of the questions I asked him was basically just stuff I wanted to know. And so I just, because he's an incredible designer, he's an incredible woodworker, he's an incredible, as you said earlier, like organizer, right? He really understands how to do process and like get it all sort of sorted out and in a way that is going to make it repeatable. Because like there's this one commission he did where he made 75 identical chairs for a convent. And I'm like, nice convent.
That's one of those commissions that I bet you dread as much as, oh, okay. I am going to jump in the car in a minute and I'm going to listen to this episode because I'm now jazzed.
There you go.
I was jazzed before anyways, but whatever. On with the episode right after. I just remind everyone, finewoodworking.com/new-England for more information on Fine Woodworking New England, which is coming up in May in Manchester, Connecticut. Also, finewoodworking.com/trips if you're interested in going on. Vic, have you heard about this? There's like
I have, and I would love to. How do I host one of these?
I think you're on the list now.
All right.
I think you're on the list now. I'm going to bring that up with people.
I want to send me to like Bulgaria for
but
anywhere.
Can you imagine going to England to check out arts and crafts furniture with John Binzen, who literally wrote the book on arts and crafts furniture?
No, I can't even imagine that.
And Pekovich. So like,
I can't even talk in front of John Binzen because I get marbles in my mouth because he's like one of those people for me.
He's a Jeff Miller status legend.
Right.
Behind the scenes of the fine woodworking world.
Right.
So, yes.
Who we should have on this podcast sometime.
Done. Vic, you're just coming up with great ideas left and right today.
That's me. I'm an ideas guy.
All right. So finewoodworking.com/tours or /trips.
Is that the same as a tour?
I'm from Connecticut, man.
You got to park the car in the yard.
finewoodworking.com/new-England. And man, it's there's so much stuff coming up. There's so much exciting stuff coming up in the woodworking world. But the most exciting thing coming up is this episode with Jeff Miller.
100%.
And yeah. I've started making guitars.
I saw that.
And I'm having so much fun with that.
That's amazing.
It's so cool.
So a guitar is on my bucket list because I played guitar for, probably close to 40 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, don't be impressed. It just means I'm stubborn. It doesn't mean I'm good.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, guitar on... that's on a bucket list thing for me because like I said, I played for so long that, and then if you work with wood, you kind of did it backwards though, right? You started making wooden musical instruments and
exactly.
Then, right.
And so this bookends my career really nicely.
Yeah, I'd say.
It's a wonderful thing to be doing. And it's a combination of a couple things. I'm also just learning to play guitar.
Oh, great.
And so I'm coming at both the guitar making and the guitar playing as a complete beginner. And yet I have this wealth of experience in both fields,
right,
to rely on. I don't know that it's helping all that much, but it feels great to be a beginner at something with a whole lot of experience behind me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think, when I think about my guitar playing sort of trajectory, I mean, I learned how to read music in high school and was in bands and all that other stuff, but it was a woodwind instrument, and so it was a little bit different. And then, there's so many notes on a guitar and so many different positions and so many,
Right.
So for me, like, I never learned to read guitar music. I only recently learned how to read tablature, which is insane when you think about it. So I would just like listen to stuff and then try to figure it out, or
Wow.
So I definitely do things the hard way, Jeff.
I'm not saying I don't. It's it's quite the challenge, and I've made wonderful mistakes.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. That is, I wish more people with your level of experience could just. Not enough people embody the mistake. The mistake is so important in learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people are so terrified of making mistakes.
I know.
And they're appalled when they do. And it's just, that's how you learn. That's how you actually get better.
Right.
You don't get better by somebody telling you how to avoid all the mistakes. You get better by making them all.
I routinely make mistakes I've told myself not to make over and over again. So, I mean, I get it. Like, and we both teach. And so we both know, like,
Right.
The reality of how crippling the mistake can be, to the point where people don't want to try stuff because they're worried about it not turning out.
Yeah. I had an apprentice at one point, and she was terrified of making mistakes.
Right.
And then she realized that when she made a mistake, I sort of lit up because I enjoyed correcting mistakes. And a long time ago, I embraced them. I actually wrote an article for the magazine on making mistakes and fixing them and various ways to deal with that. And you just have to be comfortable with the fact that you're going to screw up, because we are all human.
It's interesting. I just read a book by Adam Savage, who's the Mythbusters guy.
Right.
And he's got a fantastic book for makers. It's not woodworking specific, but it does cover woodworking in it because he does work with it. But he was talking about like the mistakes are like, that's where all the learning happens. Right. And don't bank on it like working perfectly the first time you try it. Which is ridiculous, right? Because if you think of any other endeavor, like if you didn't play a guitar for, a year and then you pick it up, like, would you expect to just, be able to play, flawlessly?
Probably not.
No.
I'm finding it's incredibly challenging, even with a professional music background.
Right.
To get my fingers to do anything remotely close to what I want them to do.
Well, it's completely foreign, right?
Yeah.
You were a brass player, right?
Right. Trumpet player.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, you don't even have to do anything with your face.
Nothing similar at all. Right. So I've been grimaced when I play the guitar.
Yeah, I hear that. And work those calluses in, because those are always critical.
Right.
So I've been following you forever because you've been around forever. And so your method of work, at least from the outside looking in, there's a lot of hand tool use there.
Yes.
And so, and I see you do things with hand tools that people would spend hours trying to figure out how to do the exact same operation with a machine, thinking that it's somehow saving them time or effort or something. Can you talk a little bit about why I think I know why you do it, but I don't think everybody knows why. Why do you do things that appear to be so difficult with hand tools instead of machines?
I feel like I have more control. I feel like I can get closer to the results I'm looking for. It's not that I don't embrace machinery, because I use it a whole lot
Sure.
in what I do, but I find it's just more efficient and closer to what I'm looking for when I'm able to control it with hand tools. It's also more fun in the end. I think I just enjoy the use of hand tools so much, and I'm still looking for efficiency in everything that I do. I have to turn things out um, as expeditiously as possible,
Right.
and there's a career to support. There's a shop to support. There's actually making some money once in a while. Um, but the hand tools allow you to get there just as well, if not better, in some circumstances.
Well, I think the one thing that what I noticed is that like you seem to not like straight lines.
Uh, I started out doing shaker furniture, and it was all straight and
Sure. And you just
square.
recently
And
did an article, the last issue that came out. You have a shaker table in there
right.
with some really wild joinery with the pins that are on the inside instead of the outside. And I thought I had to look at that drawing for a second. And I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here.
Yeah, it was just that particular table was something I saw in a photograph and just it instantly fell in love with.
But I think
Um,
I think when I look at your chairs, and well, when I look at 80% of the things that you've designed and built, and
right.
I try to think about using a machine to do some of those things, it just doesn't compute, does it?
Oh, but I use machinery to do a lot of it,
Right.
and
But the fine details, it seems
the
like it would be so cumbersome.
right, right, and so yes, I really drawn to curves and the way they interact, and I come at this from music. And to me, these curves are like musical lines, and they have to relate to one another in harmonious ways. And there are motifs. A certain curve is like a melody, and yet the melody can have components that um, relate to other components that are going on. And all of that is just so exciting to me to play around with. And yeah, I need to use hand tools a lot in what I'm doing with those. But the part that you don't see is that I also use machines
Right.
to do much of that.
I've gotten accustomed to referring to my machines as apprentices
Huh,
because they
I
do
like
the
that.
things, yeah, they do the things I'm not super excited about. Like I don't want to dimension by hand. There's no fun in that.
Oh, I've never, other than to teach myself
Right.
how to do it, I have not dimensioned by hand under any circumstance.
Not even under duress, really.
No, probably not.
But it's interesting because because you're not afraid of like what I would call wooden machines. Like when you
Right.
talk about the one that I always remember is I can't remember if it was an article or if it was a blog post of yours, but you had devised this clamp that you could basically put like an apron for a table in, and then you could adjust its angle, and then you had like a series of tools that would like reference the top surface and then create your knife line, and then you could even cut your shoulders and everything.
I don't remember that. It's
Oh,
been 42 years of
yeah, yeah.
woodworking, and I'm not sure I remember what that was.
Yeah, it was
But
just an interesting jig that allowed you to sort of like have a reference surface so that you could just line up a piece, and then you could,
yeah.
and it just made good sense. And it's like, why haven't we done that before?
So one of the things, especially with curves and strange shapes that are so important in my work, is that I'm always trying to establish references and in many ways turn things that are really oddly shaped back into rectangles
Mm,
by holding them in a jig or creating some sort of way to hold it that gives me reference surfaces. And it just makes everything so much easier when it's held in a way that makes sense.
right. Right.
And
Yeah.
many times that means taking a bizarrely curved part and holding it so that it is a rectangle in reference to a machine or in reference to how I want to cut it with
Right.
hand tools.
I've never thought about it in those sort of words, saying like, making it back into a rectangle so that you can do that. Because,
Right,
I think a lot of times in woodworking, we try to, at least I try to like cut joinery and things while the part is still as square and rectangular as it can be. And then I
right,
shape it.
right.
But in some cases, if you're doing like a bent lamination or you're doing, like there's no way to do that.
But that can also be very inefficient to do it that way. Whereas if I'm cutting nesting chair legs, I don't have that rectangular reference
Right.
anymore. But if I did it as rectangles, I would waste an additional 30% of the wood.
It's true.
And when you're cutting a set of chairs, you may not have the option to do that because you want them all to match.
Right.
Um, so that led to the process, basically.
Yeah. No, I think it makes good sense. And because your designs are like they're fun to look at. I think
Thank
they're
you.
just there's so much going on. There's so much. They appear simple, but there's a lot of dynamics that's happening within each one. And so you alluded to earlier that you sort of like approach this in a sort of a musical sort of frame. Can you talk a little bit about that? About how you like how does the music inform the furniture design?
For me, creativity is creativity. And as a musician, there were certain things that I was looking for, excuse me. Um, and those aren't different when I'm approaching woodworking. I really want melody, I want harmony, and it all adds up to an approach that is what I'm looking for has to look the way I want it to sound in a way, or
Right.
that I wanted music to sound. Um, I don't know that makes a huge amount of sense to someone who doesn't have the experiences I had, but um, there's a lot going on in my mind as I'm doing this. This brings up something also that I had a discussion with someone, and they were surprised by some of the things I do. And let me put it this way: a lot of people build from plans, and
Right.
plans are very much analogous to sheet music, the
Okay.
music that you see. But what you have to recognize is that the sheet music only encompasses a small portion of what makes something truly musical.
Hmm.
And that's every bit as true for plans in woodworking. They don't cover how well your lines exist when you convert from one to the other. Doesn't encompass your wood choice and how harmonious that is over the course of the entire piece. It doesn't really capture things that in music, the score tells you that, yes, it gets louder here or quieter there, but how much and how well that's done. The fact that you have the notes in a sequence of notes doesn't tell you how expressive that line actually is. And the same is true of woodworking plans. And that's always how I've treated the pieces that I make, that it has to be way more than just what the plans would capture.
Right. Right. So you're actually looking at it from like a feeling point of view. It's like, how do I want to
Yes,
express this?
exactly.
Right. And then hopefully by your expression in the building of it, then the person who sits in it or the person who sits at it then feels that expression as well.
Exactly.
Right.
And, the chairs, which I've done the most of at this point, they have to capture comfort, they have to capture structure, but most important of all, they have to be visually interesting and exciting to look at. And, to my mind, they have to be musically expressive as well.
Well, and it's no easy task to my mind. Like chairs are tough
Yes,
because they got to look good and they got to feel good, and they have to be strong,
right,
and they have to be all of the things that a piece of furniture needs to be and look beautiful.
right.
And so when you talk about harmony, I think I know what you mean by that. But could you talk a bit about like your chairs, like what are you striving for as far as like the term harmony?
There are a lot of curves in my chairs,
Mm-hmm.
and the curves relate to one another. Um, they may not be the same thing. One may be an inversion of another. There may be a difference in scale, but overall, you look at any of the curves that are there, they somehow speak to the other curves that are there in a very harmonious way. Um, they're not haphazard. I sweat those curves. I can't tell you how much time I spend, perfecting them in or at least making them as close to what I'm intending as possible. And so often you look at things and those curves don't relate, or they aren't perfect, or they don't flow exactly right. And all of that's really important to me.
Right. When you say the terminology you just used was really good. When you said you sweat a curve, like what does that look like? Like if you're in the process of sweating a curve, like I know sometimes like I'll put something up on the wall, like a drawing on the wall in the kitchen, and then every time I walk by it, I look at it and I like something I don't like about it, and I try different. Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, it's very similar to that, but I also, with each individual curve, I will look down the curve at a low angle, which is incredibly revealing, that every little kink or, place that doesn't flow perfectly is revealed even more when you look down at a very, sight down it at a very low angle.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have to cut it exactly right and
Sure.
smooth it exactly right. When I talk about curves, I'm usually talking about two things: fair and smooth. A fair curve is like a road that you drive down that is just perfect. You just flowing down it, and you feel that it's very natural to drive down it. And a smooth curve is, it's got to be smooth. It can't have lumps and bumps and
Right.
everything else. So that's basically what I mean by sweating those curves. And everyone has to relate to the one near it and the one on the other side of the piece, and they have to make sense together.
Right. And the killer part about chairs I find is that like there's not one or two viewing angles.
Right.
It's
I mean,
like 300.
Right. It's a 365-degree thing, 360.
Yeah.
And chairs definitely have a sweet spot. Their better side.
Sure.
Usually 3/4 from the back is fantastic for most chairs. But if they don't work from the front and the side, I've seen a lot of chairs that work from one angle only.
Right.
And the rest is just a mess.
Right.
And so chairs prototypes generally will get set up and left in my shop on a bench. And I'll walk around them for days trying to make sure that everything works right. And there's just no substitute for that.
So I was going to ask that. I assumed that you're building full-scale prototypes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have to. And there really are two different kinds of prototype. There's a comfort prototype that I do very quickly and, try and get the shapes. And I may not even have an idea what the actual chair is going to look like before I do that.
Right.
And then I have the important curves already nailed down, and I start fussing with how it's going to look.
Right.
And I do
you
that
need to be able to sit in it.
Right. And I do that with every single chair I do. I start with a comfort prototype. And that way I've been able to get better. I'm not always cannibalizing what I did right the previous time.
Right.
I'm constantly experimenting with comfort. And it's great. And, in an hour I can build a comfort prototype.
Right.
And then I know what the curves are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I don't know what the chair is going to be.
Which I find is interesting that you say that because at any point as you're playing with this, you can take a sharp turn right. Right.
Well, yes, absolutely.
And then it's like, oh, I'm on a different path here. But you just follow that and see where it takes you.
Exactly. The analogy I like to use when I'm talking about design, and certainly for chair design, is that it's like raising kids. You may want them to turn out a certain way, but they have their own idea of where they're going.
Right.
And I think a good design, it's more a process of discovering where it's going than sticking to the initial inspiration that you had.
Right.
And I'm always working from some inspiration or other, but
right.
The better chairs are ones that I just let go.
Right.
And follow.
And as any parent knows, if you try to force it in a certain direction,
yep,
it's not going to go well.
It doesn't go well. No, it does not.
So when you're conveying this, so you teach a lot.
Yes.
You've taught all over the world. Plus you teach private, or not privately, but you teach in your shop.
In my shop. Most of the teaching I do now is in my shop. I have enough health issues that I'm not able to travel as much as I would like to.
Right. And those are tough. That's tough to do too, though. Traveling to teach it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It doesn't work. I'm on dialysis. It does not work to do that.
Right.
Right. I've made it work over the years, but it's getting harder and harder.
Oh, for sure. So when you're teaching, obviously a big part of what you're teaching, there's we teach techniques, we teach, various things. When you teach design, because there's always this sort of is the designer already in there, or is it like a nature nurture thing? If you are can you make someone a designer? What are your thoughts on that? I've kind of heard it kind of go both ways, where there has to be a bit of a seed in there that you can water, and other people say, well, if you just work at it, you can do it.
My sense, certainly people are better at it than others. But my sense is that deep down, we are all, there's creativity in all of us.
100%.
And it's mostly a question of trying to tap back into that. I think through education and through most of what we learn to become good critics, but not necessarily good designers. That tends to get beaten out of us pretty early.
Yeah.
Kids are all creative,
right?
In lots of different ways. So it's a question of going back into that. And when I'm teaching design, I have a set of building blocks that I pull out. I have this very old thing called color forms, which was these little vinyl stickers that you would put onto something else. And I pull that out, and I try to get people to play.
Right.
And once you start doing that, it's like exercising something we've lost. And I find that most of my students wind up coming up with nice creative solutions to the things they're looking for. Some are so wedded to their initial ideas that they don't let loose. And, so they come up with a better version of what they're trying to come up with. But others really do tap into creativity that they didn't think they had.
Right.
And get some good results that way.
I always find that interesting that people really, especially adults, and I find the older the adult is, the harder it is to kind of get them back into it.
Yes.
But like, we were all artists, as evidenced by our parents' refrigerators.
Exactly.
Right. And so we were, and somewhere down the line, like you said, we became very good at being critical of ourselves, but not really good at sort of like saying, hey, that's pretty cool.
Right.
Another thing that I see a lot of people struggle with, and I wonder what your thoughts are, is the ability or inability to draw.
Drawing is different from illustration. And what we need as furniture designers is the ability to illustrate. And there are some very straightforward techniques that you can learn rather quickly to be able to illustrate that way. I can draw furniture with great ease at this point. I couldn't when I started out.
Sure.
Can I draw faces accurately? No, I'm not very good at that.
Right.
Or the human body. If I worked at it, I probably would get much better at it.
Sure.
It's a skill, and it's something that is not that hard to learn. There's great books on illustration out there, and they're incredibly worthwhile investigating.
Well, and the reality is it requires, as you said, practice.
So does woodworking.
Right. Everything. Like getting good with a pencil is practice. Right.
I come at this from music, where practice is just, it's integral to everything. You can't do anything without practice.
Right.
In music. And woodworkers seem to think, well, I've never cut dovetails before, but I'm going to nail it because I'm good at this. And the reality is, you spend a month practicing it, you'll be fine. But you don't spend a month practicing it, your chances are very low.
Right. Well, even if you haven't cut dovetails for a number of months.
Exactly.
Right. Like, I have to do a couple of practice joints just to kind of like get the muscles worked out and get the cobwebs cleared out. And
so do I. Yeah.
Right. But I think people just assume that shouldn't be the case. And I always liken it to golf. And I hate that I use golf analogies because I hate golf. But it's like a golfer would never, like after a long winter, would never just step out onto the whatever it is, the court or the field,
Yeah,
and just start, hoping for the best. They'd go and hit a few buckets of balls. They would do practices.
exactly.
They would stretch. They would,
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, why not do that for everything?
Uh, that's, I'm not in any disagreement with you at all. Practice is important, and I had to practice an awful lot before I could cut to a line
Right.
or saw a mortise and tenon or chop a mortise. And, all of it takes practice.
I blame it on the social media stuff where we see
Yes.
we see 100% results like in a 30-second clip, and it's like, oh, it's just that easy.
Yeah.
And
So
you don't see the other stuff.
let me take this back. You had said when I'm teaching, what am I trying to do? And you sort of limited it to design. When I'm teaching, I'm doing something that, yes, I'm covering the steps that are required to cut a successful dovetail joint. But mostly what I'm doing is watching the way students use their body and also trying to figure out if they understand what the tool really does. And how we use our bodies is so important to getting good results. If things don't line up properly, if you're not standing properly, if you're not holding the tool in exactly the right manner, you're not going to get good results. And so it's more than practice. It's actually understanding what your body is doing. And the tools are just tools that allow your body to do certain things that you couldn't do without them.
Right.
But at the same time, there are effective and efficient ways to use your body that allow you to get things done and not hurt yourself and work more accurately and work more efficiently.
Right. Like, do you find I see a lot of people who use an all-around kung fu grip on their saw handles?
When I talk about a saw handle, I tell people to hold the saw as if they're holding a baby bird.
100%. Yeah.
And people look at me like, huh? What? And we talk about not having any dead birds in the shop when they're done.
That's really good.
And there are a lot of dead birds when we're starting out.
Right. Right. And I think like I liken it to like somebody should be able to just walk up and knock the saw right out of your hand.
Yeah, that's a nice, I may steal that.
Sure.
Any unnecessary tension when you're holding these tools translates into an inability to adapt and to much less efficient use of the tool.
Right. Right. And I think, like body mechanics is a huge part of everything that we do, not just woodworking. Again, we were sort of going back and forth between music and all that other stuff. Like if I'm sitting upright and at a comfortable position to play guitar, I can play guitar for hours. But if I'm like being lazy and slump over the body, you played brass, like you need your air. And if
exactly, it has to be open and
your air up.
Yep. And all of that applies. And it's something I really ported over from music, where, everything that you do that adds tension comes out in how you play.
Right.
especially with a wind instrument. If your airflow isn't free and easy, people hear it.
The notes are strangulated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We should write a book about body mechanics.
I sort of did.
Which one?
The Foundations of Better Woodworking.
Oh, Foundations. Yes, you cover it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite books, by the
Well,
way.
we can talk about that. I think
Yeah. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to it. And I think it has a lot more effect on what people's results are than they think is the case.
I mean, how you hold a chisel and how you position it and how you look at it influences whether you can pare or chop straight and square. How you hold the saw and where the movement comes from influences whether you can actually move the saw back and forth in a straight line.
Right.
If your wrist is sort of bent and not in line with your forearm, then every time you move forward, it has to flex and then unflex.
It changes. It's constantly changing.
Whereas if everything lines up, it's just you pivot from your shoulder and things line up and it works.
It's like a good snooker shot.
Yes.
You got to have like nice, even, clear strokes, not wobbling all over the place.
Right. Exactly.
So, which can be tough to convey other than sort of look at what I'm doing and then like being right in front of them or behind them. And
well, that's what I do. I'm constantly wandering around and looking at everybody. The other thing that I find I can do in teaching is I can tell how someone's doing by the sound.
You mean when they're saying,
well, no. Not necessarily that. I mean, the sound of a saw.
Right.
I can tell how much tension is in their body. I can tell whether they're lined up or not. And so people will be sawing, and I'll come over from across the room and say, I could hear that you were doing that wrong.
Right.
And they'll look at me like, wait, what? But it's incredibly obvious.
Right.
Based on the sound of certain things, how someone is doing.
It's the same thing with the sharpness of chisels.
Well, yeah.
Like you can hear if somebody's wailing back there trying to get dovetail waste out, and you're like, you shouldn't have to be hitting that hard.
Right.
What do you get out of it, Jeff?
Certainly planing, you can tell how sharp a plane is just by the sound of it.
It's true.
All of this is feedback that people should be tapping into in their own work. Forget somebody else hearing it. How the woodworking that you're doing sounds, even table saw.
Right.
Or router, you should be able to tell from the sound how well things are going.
Right. It's when you're in the bench room and then you hear in the machine room, you hear a router running and then you hear that telltale sound. And it's like, whoa, that didn't go well. I'm going to go out there.
Or just, even if it isn't that, if you hear it screaming at you, then you know that they're pushing it too hard or trying to do too much with it, or the depth of cut is wrong. All of this in your own work should help you to do better work. The more feedback you have, it's like driving a car. You don't wait until you're in the ditch to correct the steering.
Right.
And if you hear that something is going wrong, you should immediately be correcting for it.
Right.
Not waiting until the moment.
Right. You're under no obligation to keep going with it.
Right. Exactly.
You can stop.
Exactly.
Jeff, what do you get out of this? What do you get out of teaching?
It's so exciting to me to see people actually start to get it.
Hmm.
There's a phenomenal satisfaction in taking someone who really can't do something and they struggle with it, and you make some corrections, and all of a sudden they light up.
Hmm.
Um, you're really enabling people to start doing things that they weren't able to do before. And I find that incredibly satisfying.
That's really, yeah. For me, it's a very similar thing. It's that I love making stuff with my hands so much that I feel like everybody should want to
Uh,
make stuff with their hands.
uh-huh.
And so it's like, I'm so excited by it that I want them to get excited by it. And like you said, when they do, it's that moment of like, yes.
And you can see joy in people's faces
Right.
when they were struggling with something and then they understand what's involved. And yes, they're going to have to practice it and do it again, and sort of take what an instructor tells them and really start to incorporate that in
Hmm.
what they're doing. And that takes time too.
Yes.
Just because I know that my forearm and my wrist need to line up doesn't mean I'm going to be able to get it right away. It may take me a
Right.
month to figure that out and
Right.
incorporate that in what I do every time.
And the
But
practice is different too, right? Like, I mean, I just recently learned that like I could be practicing more effectively when I, for example, play guitar.
sure,
And the only reason I know this is because I worked with a friend of mine who is an incredible guitarist. And he's like, what does a practice session look like for you? And I'm like, I just kind of noodle around a bit and I do a bit of this, a bit of that. And he said, well, I think we found your problem.
purpose. You need to go at it with a real purpose. What am I
Right,
trying to learn today?
right,
How am I going to get my fingers to go here and there at the right moments?
right. And it's repetitive and
Uh,
sometimes it's monotonous and sometimes it's
absolutely.
awful because you've had to slow the pace down by half. But if you don't, you'll
Right,
never get it.
right. Exactly. And the same is true in woodworking.
100%. I tell people to slow down all the time.
Yeah,
Slow down. Just
right. You
take
don't
it
have to
easy.
cut that fast. You don't have to cut that
No,
hard.
right.
You have to make it work the right way.
A sharp hand tool takes no effort.
Right.
I find like a hand plane, like if you're struggling to push it, something's wrong. Too
Right.
big of a bite, dull blade, go in the wrong direction, something.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be easy because I tell people I'm lazy. Like I don't want to work harder than I have to. And so like if I have to really push a hand plane to get it going, it's like there's something not going on right here.
Right, right, exactly. And maybe it's body position.
Right.
And maybe your tool is fine, but you're using your body wrong. So that's also a sort of a tool error.
Right.
Trying to just use your arms instead of planing with your legs.
You only do that for one day.
Yeah.
And you wake up with your back all sore and yeah, you figure that out pretty quick, don't you?
Well, some people do. Some people don't.
That's fair.
Um,
What's being built in your shop right now?
Mostly guitars.
Okay.
I started last summer with guitars. I'm working on my fourth one right now. This is the
Are
first one
you
where.
getting any instruction? Are you
Oh
just
yeah.
okay? Okay.
Um, and this is the first one where I made the rosette also,
Amazing.
which was so much fun, so much work.
What did you do? What type of rosette? What style?
Um, it's sort of my own thing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, for me, I have my own ideas of design, and so I just kind of went with what I wanted to do. And it's a fairly traditional, this is a classical guitar.
Okay.
But it's not anything I've seen in a rosette before. I'm just having fun with it.
Is this for you? This endeavor?
At the moment,
like, are we going to be buying guitars from Jeff Miller next year?
Maybe.
Really?
Maybe.
Interesting.
I just keep trying to get better.
Right.
And better at it. And I'm not opposed to selling guitars.
Anything, really.
Well,
chairs.
Yeah, right. I'm not doing that much furniture anymore. I've been doing this for 42 years. And I went through some huge health things a couple of years ago and didn't really feel all that excited about furniture. I still have some chairs I really want to do.
Okay.
But I needed to switch to something that really excited me again.
Right.
And the guitars are doing that very much. I'm eager to get to the shop every single day.
That's amazing.
And move things forward.
I bet.
And then I go home and I practice on a guitar that I made. So
like your life is guitars and building them and playing them these days.
Right. It really is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like I could get into that.
Yeah. It's fun.
Right. And that's just it, isn't it? It's like it's doing what you want to do. And I mean, I'm sure that furniture was you had those exact moments all the time, building and discovering new shapes and ideas. And
absolutely.
And you've done a lot in your life with furniture. And it's like at some point I can imagine it's like, okay, I want to put my skills to something else here.
I would say for the last 5 years, I have experimented around with things that I was not good at. I did some green woodworking chairs and spoon carving and, just elements of woodworking that were mysterious and foreign to me. I got involved in the David Pye inspired fluting engine.
Yes.
And started making bowls. And I've never done that before. And
that machine is so cool.
It's just the most bizarre thing.
If I come visit in Chicago, can I try it?
Of course.
Oh my God. That thing just looks like so much fun.
It's set up and working. And again, it was learning something entirely new.
Right.
And not just learning something entirely new, learning how to build this machine. And there aren't really plans for it. He has some discussion and some photos of it. And figuring that out. And the guitars are exactly in this realm. It's something entirely new, but I'm a woodworker with chops. And so a lot of it made inherent sense to me. And there are parts that were so incredibly foreign.
Right.
And I just love that exploration of new stuff.
Even just wood being like looking at wood for its acoustical properties or its like resonance and like there's just so much, like it's totally different now.
It is totally different. And it's also sort of like working with cardboard and matchsticks.
It's on the verge of exploding at any moment.
Exactly. I mean, there's it seems like there's no structure to it at all. And yet it comes together and it's incredibly good structurally.
Right.
And in this vein, I'm getting together with a friend in a couple months, and we're going to build a skin-on-frame canoe.
So speaking of cardboard and matchsticks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing.
Exactly. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So you're just exploring new things and having a great time doing it.
Exactly.
Well, listen, Jeff, I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, this was so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, have you been on the podcast before?
No, I have not.
Oh my, well, what a sin that is. This won't be the last time, I'll tell you that much.
Well, great.
Yeah.
This was so much fun reconnecting with you and getting a chance to talk.
100%. And again, like if listeners have only ever seen you in the magazine or anything like that, it's like there's so much more to Jeff Miller than a few magazine articles. I mean, go check it out, go explore, and soon you'll be able to buy a guitar made by
Yeah, maybe so.
Which is great. When do I put my commission in? Like, how do I do this?
Whatever you want. My website is furnituremaking.com. I guess I was early.
You sure were. That's the best email. Like when I saw or not email address, but when I saw your URL, I was like, how did he get that?
I have no idea.
Turns out you just have to be the first furniture maker to have a website.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case.
All right, Jeff, thanks for hanging out with me, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, so much fun. Take care, Vic.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that's it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Shop Talk Live is hosted by me, Vic Teslin, and the always entertaining Ben Strano. Our show is expertly mixed and edited by Jeff Rose, which is the only reason this thing sounds remotely professional. Mike Pekovich is Fine Woodworking's creative director, and Bridget Gruber, also known around the shop as Dinkle, is our associate digital editor. If you want the show notes, head over to shoptalklive.com to find them. If you're watching on YouTube, how about you give us a thumbs up? It helps the algorithm push this out to more woodworkers instead of cat videos. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a 5-star review because apparently that's how the internet decides if something is good. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Shop Talk Live. Until then, go make some shavings.